Wait. Play that part again. The room fell silent. The attorney hit rewind. The video flickered. And then there he was. My grandfather, staring directly into the camera, voice calm but sharp. If you're watching this, it means I'm gone. And if my family still hasn't changed, well, this will. He smiled. Let's begin with the truth. About all of you. That was the moment everything turned. The moment my family finally stopped laughing at me. My name is Ethan Wells. I'm 23 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the disappointment in a family full of overachievers. Before I dive into my story, I want to know, where are you watching from today? And as you listen, let me know in the comments how this story makes you feel or if you've ever experienced something similar. Your thoughts mean a lot to me, and I'd love to hear your perspective. My older cousin Olivia? Harvard Law, top of her class. My twin brother Noah? Tech genius. Built and sold an app before graduation. And me? I dropped out of college after 2 semesters, tried to start a podcast, worked night shifts, and barely made rent in my small studio apartment. So when my grandfather passed away 3 weeks ago, no one expected me to show up to the will reading, including me. But I did. And nothing could have prepared them, or me, for what happened next. It started with a text. From Attorney Joseph Herrick's subject, reading of Raymond Wells' last will and testament. Dear Ethan, as a named party in the final will of your grandfather, Mr. Raymond Wells, your attendance is requested. I reread it at least 5 times. I hadn't seen my grandfather in nearly a year. We used to be close until I started slipping. The rest of the family said he finally gave up on me. I half believed them. But something about that message, it didn't feel like a formality. The reading was scheduled for a Monday morning, 9 a.m., in a glass-paneled law office overlooking the city. When I walked in, every head turned. Noah raised an eyebrow. Olivia whispered something to Aunt Helen and smirked. You're here? Uncle Rick said, loud enough to get a chuckle from the others. Did you get lost, or are you here to fix the Wi-Fi? I ignored them and sat in the back corner. There were 10 of them in total, all blood relatives, all certain that whatever Grandpa had left behind, it was for them. Mr. Herrick, the attorney, entered last, carrying a single wooden box and a sealed envelope. He greeted everyone, cleared his throat, and said calmly, before we begin the will, Mr. Wells left behind a personal message. To be viewed by all beneficiaries. That's when he opened the box. Inside was a USB drive, the kind Grandpa always used for his home videos, labeled in his neat, blocky handwriting, final message. The screen lowered from the wall. The room dimmed, and there he was. My grandfather, dressed in his favorite blue sweater, sitting in the old leather chair from his study. His voice came through strong and clear, like he was right there in the room with us. You've all gathered here today to hear about my will. But I'm not starting with legal talk. I'm starting with a story. A real one. One that's been recorded by me for years. The camera angle shifted. It was footage. Secret footage. Clips of family dinners. Conversations. Even security footage from his house. And what we saw next made the room shrink. Aunt Helen saying, he's old and soft. I'm sure we'll get the house once he's gone. Olivia, laughing while pocketing money from Grandpa's medicine cabinet. Noah sneaking into the study, trying to find a folder marked, trust documents. Scene after scene, showing what they never thought anyone would see. But the worst part? They didn't look ashamed. Just angry. Except me. Because I wasn't in any of those videos. Not once. Some of you will be upset, Grandpa's voice continued. But this was the only way I could show the truth. I gave you all time. I watched. I waited. Only one of you ever came to visit without asking for something. Only one of you tried even after failing. That's the person I trust. I could feel their eyes on me now. Some disbelieving. Some furious. And Mr. Herrick, calm as ever, opened the envelope. The sole beneficiary of the estate of Raymond Wells, properties, finances, investments, and all personal holdings is Ethan Wells. It was like oxygen left the room. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt stunned. Because part of me had believed them all these years that I wasn't enough. But Grandpa had been watching. And now the game had changed. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was a reckoning. And it was only the beginning. They didn't scream. Not right away. They just at me. At the attorney. At the screen now frozen on Grandpa's face. No one knew what to say first. Then Aunt Helen stood. Her voice sharp, coated with entitlement. This must be a mistake. This isn't legal. There are witnesses. Raymond told me I'd have the beach house. Mr. Herrick didn't flinch. I assure you, Mrs. Whitman, the will is legally binding. verified, notarized, and video-backed. Mr. Wells made changes 2 years ago, and those changes name Ethan as sole heir. Silence again. Then chaos. Olivia muttered, "This is a joke," and threw her chair back. Noah, my own twin, leaned over the table toward me. "You put him up to this. You manipulated him." "I didn't even talk to him for months," I snapped. "You know that." "Exactly," he hissed. "You disappear for a year and suddenly you own everything? That's not earning it, that's theft." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I realized, in that moment, he truly believed it. They all did. They thought love was transactional. That Grandpa owed them something just for existing. But Grandpa didn't give me the inheritance because I was perfect. He gave it to me because I wasn't, and I still came back. The meeting dissolved into arguing. Some stormed out. Others stayed, circling Mr. Herrick with questions and threats. I stood alone by the office window, watching the city move below me, 1,000 stories unfolding at once, and mine, somehow, had just taken a turn I never saw coming. "Ethan," Mr. Herrick called. "A moment, please?" "You walked over." He handed me a small black envelope, thicker than the rest. "Your grandfather left this for you. Personal instructions. Not to be opened until you're alone." My fingers curled around it. I nodded. "Thank you." "And one more thing," he added. "The recordings. Those weren't all of it. He left more. A set of flash drives. Hidden. And he said you'd know where to start looking." By the time I got home, I was shaking. Not with fear. Not quite with excitement. It was something else. Something in between. I set the envelope on my desk and stared at it. For 20 minutes. Maybe more. Then I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note on old stationery, in Grandpa's tidy script. "Ethan, you were never the failure they claimed. You had heart and that scared them. I knew you'd find your way back. That's why I trusted you with more than just my estate. There are things they hid, lies they told. Begin where I taught you to think. The place where you first asked me about the stars. RW, I swallowed hard. I knew exactly what he meant. The observatory. His old cabin in the woods. Where we used to sit with a telescope and talk about galaxies and Greek myths. The last time I was there, I was 16. The next morning, I drove out before dawn. The road to the cabin was overgrown, nearly invisible. But I remembered every curve. When I unlocked the door, dust greeted me like an old friend. Everything was the same, the shelves of science books. The broken armchair. The brass telescope by the window. And near it, a small wooden box, sealed with a carved star symbol. It clicked open with a soft sound. Inside, a worn leather notebook. 3 USB drives, each labeled in Grandpa's handwriting. And a photo of him and me, laughing under the stars. My eyes blurred. I opened the notebook first. The front page read, "If you're reading this, you've passed the first test. Now comes the truth." Then page after page, names, dates, scribbled observations. My family. My parents. My cousins. Even Noah. What he had written. It wasn't just thoughts. It was evidence. Receipts. Voice transcripts. Hints of legal wrongdoing. Manipulated medical decisions. Hidden bank accounts. They hadn't just ignored Grandpa. They had tried to control him. The drives were numbered. I loaded the first into my laptop. A folder appeared, Wells Family Recordings. There were hundreds of files. Most were labeled by date. But one had no label at all. Just a number, 00 final warning. MP4 I clicked it. Grandpa appeared again, older, weaker, but his eyes were still fire. "To whoever finds this first, if it's Ethan, then you've earned it. If it's anyone else, you've failed the test. Don't let them twist this. They will try. But if the truth wins, so do you." Then the screen went black. My phone buzzed. A message from Olivia. "Lawyer said you're moving into the estate. Don't get comfortable. We're contesting this." I smiled. Let them try. They thought the reading of the will was the end. But it was only the first strike. Grandpa didn't just give me an inheritance. He gave me the ammunition. And the fight was just beginning. They thought I wouldn't dare step foot in that house. Not after what they said. Not after how they laughed. But the following week, I walked up the stone steps of the Wells estate with one bag in my hand, a folder of legal documents in the other, and the front gate clicking shut behind me. The same gate they used to lock behind me. Now I had the key. The house hadn't changed much. A wide wraparound porch, white columns, old iron lanterns flanking the entryway. Everything still smelled like cedar and lemon oil, just like Grandpa always liked it. But something else lingered now, too. Like the air itself remembered secrets. Mr. Herrick had the locks changed the morning I moved in. He handed me the official documents declaring me sole legal owner. He even left behind a security camera system and a list of attorneys specialized in posthumous inheritance disputes. That told me everything I needed to know. They weren't just going to contest the will. They were going to try to bury it. I spent the first 2 nights exploring every inch of the house. Not because I was paranoid, okay, maybe a little, but mostly because I wanted to see what Grandpa left behind. He was meticulous. Every drawer labeled. Every folder in order. But on the 3rd night, I found something he hadn't labeled. A locked drawer in his study desk. The key didn't match anything I had. So I did the most logical thing I could think of. I gently pried it open with a flathead screwdriver. Inside was a single item, a silver tape recorder. Old-fashioned. Pre-loaded with a tiny cassette. The sticky label on the tape simply read, "Their true faces." I hit play. July 12th. Olivia came today. She smiled like usual, plastic, but this time, she asked me about my safe codes. I told her I forgot. She pretended to laugh. But I saw it in her eyes. August 4th. Noah's been snooping. He thinks I don't notice. But I've hidden decoys. If he finds them, he'll think he's ahead. That's the point. September 18th. Helen and Rick visited. They brought me soup. It was the same soup I had an allergic reaction to 5 years ago. They didn't remember or didn't care. My chest tightened with every word. He'd known. All along. And he'd recorded it not just for himself, but for me. For this exact moment. A week after I moved in, the first lawsuit arrived. Official. Aggressive. Filed by Aunt Helen and Uncle Rick, claiming undue influence and mental instability. They even submitted a doctor's note they happened to have, saying Grandpa had early-stage dementia, a note dated 6 months before his passing. The problem? I already had video of him reading legal documents and citing case law fluently 8 months after that. Grandpa planned for this. I walked into the law office for our first hearing, not as the embarrassed dropout they remembered, but as the legal owner of their childhood home, armed with every piece of proof they didn't know I had. When the opposing lawyers cited the so-called doctor's note, I slid a USB across the table. "This is a video of Mr. Wells discussing your client's own lawsuit history in detail," I said calmly. With full cognitive awareness, citing dates and outcomes. I believe it contradicts the claim of mental instability. Their lawyer paused. "Where did you get this?" "From the man who actually owned the house you're trying to steal." Outside the courtroom, Olivia was waiting. "You're not going to win," she said. "You don't have the stomach for it." "You think this is about money?" I asked. She scoffed. "It always is." "No. It's about truth. And you're not ready for that part." She rolled her eyes and walked away, but not before glancing nervously at my pocket, where the second USB Grandpa left me still sat, untouched. I hadn't opened it yet, because he said to wait. That night I did. The folder inside was titled, Wells Holdings Shadow Accounts. Bank statements. Offshore transfers. Memos from Grandpa's personal accountant. It didn't take long to figure out what I was looking at. Noah had been stealing. Tiny amounts at first, misplaced, investment reports, redirected dividends. Then larger sums, all masked behind dummy corporations and proxy accounts. I stared at the screen. $1.8 million. Gone. And Grandpa knew. He hadn't said anything. He just documented it all. And then left it for me to decide what to do. The next morning, I emailed the files to Mr. Herrick. He replied within an hour, "This changes everything. We'll file a criminal report immediately. Are you ready for that kind of fallout?" I hesitated. Was I? Could I really go up against my own brother? The one who shared a room with me as a kid? The one who stood up for me when I failed my first college exam? The one who, somewhere along the way, stopped seeing me as family and started seeing me as competition? Then I opened Grandpa's notebook again. One line jumped out at me. "Ethan, if you let guilt stop you, they win. Always choose what's right over what's easy." So I sent one final reply. File it. Let the truth speak. 2 days later, Noah showed up at the estate. Uninvited. Furious. "You think you've earned this? You're not better than us, Ethan." "No," I said quietly. "But I'm not lying about who I am. That's the difference." He looked like he wanted to say something else, but then he saw the security camera above the porch, the red light blinking. He turned and walked away. I watched him go, knowing this wasn't over. Not yet. Because there was still one more drive left. The third one. The one Grandpa had labeled only with a single word, legacy. I waited 3 weeks before I opened the last drive. Not because I forgot. Not because I was afraid of what it might say. but because part of me knew everything would change after this. The first drive exposed their lies. The second proved their crimes. But the third? The one Grandpa labeled legacy? That one wasn't just a message. It was a plan. It was a cloudy Thursday when I sat down at his old desk, slipped the final USB into the port, and waited for the folder to open. One file. A video. No cryptic names this time. Just a title in capital letters. If Ethan is watching. I clicked it. Grandpa appeared on screen again, in the same chair, this time older. Slower. But his voice? Still firm. Still him. If you're watching this, you've passed the tests. You've seen what I saw. Felt what I felt. But there's something I never told you. Something I couldn't say while I was alive. He leaned forward, resting his hands on his knees. Your grandmother didn't die peacefully. At least, not the way they say. And everything changed after that. The trust, the documents, the pressure. They tried to convince me I was losing my mind, but I wasn't. My heart froze. I started digging Ethan. And what I found about this family, about my own children, broke something in me. The screen faded to black. Then returned, showing scanned documents, emails, audio clips. And suddenly, everything I thought I knew collapsed. My Aunt Helen had manipulated my grandmother's medical care. The records Grandpa had found and now shared proved it. She'd encouraged the use of an experimental treatment that had already been flagged by Grandma's physician. Even worse, she'd pressured the doctors into signing a non-liability form, bypassing Grandpa altogether by claiming he was mentally unfit to make decisions. He wasn't. He had proof, audio recordings of calls she didn't know he was recording. We just need her out of the picture, okay? He's not signing over the real estate until she's gone. That voice was unmistakably Helen's. The video cut back to Grandpa. This is what broke me, Ethan. But it's also what gave me clarity. You always thought you didn't measure up. That you weren't like them. You're not. And that's exactly why I chose you. He paused. You don't owe them forgiveness. But you do owe the truth its day. If you're brave enough. Expose it. Not for revenge. For justice. Then the screen faded again. And I sat in silence, the hum of my laptop the only sound in the room. By the next morning, I'd made my decision. I contacted Mr. Herrick. Sent over every file, every voice recording, every signed medical document Grandpa had collected. We submitted it all to a private investigative team he trusted, one that worked specifically on elder abuse and end-of-life financial manipulation. The investigation opened quietly. But the results? Explosive. A month later, I received the first call. Ethan? You may want to sit down. The Wells family is being placed under formal investigation for coordinated financial fraud and medical coercion. This could become a criminal case. The local press got wind of it. At first, just whispers. But by the end of the week, the headlines spread. Respected philanthropist's family under scrutiny after shocking will revelation, wealthy heirs accused of elder manipulation, grandson exposes alleged abuse. Suddenly, I was the one reporters were calling. They wanted a statement. I gave them one. I never wanted any of this. But the truth deserved to be heard. And I'm just making sure my grandfather's voice doesn't disappear with him. That's when the threats started. Anonymous messages. Unmarked letters. Even a rock thrown through the estate's kitchen window one night with a single note attached. This isn't over. But I didn't flinch. Because I remembered what Grandpa said in that final recording. They rely on your silence. The moment you speak, their power breaks. So I spoke louder. And then came the final blow. A letter from Grandpa's personal bank. Inside, a copy of a trust transfer document, one that had been kept off record, filed under a clause titled, Conditional Legacy. It stated that should the Wells family face criminal charges as a result of Ethan's investigation, the entire charitable arm of the Wells estate, worth over $12 million, would be placed in Ethan's control with sole discretion. The trust was never meant for them. It was meant to be rebuilt. That night, I stood in the backyard of the estate, looking up at the stars. I could almost feel him beside me again. The man who taught me to find constellations, to ask questions no one else would ask. The man who trusted me to carry his truth, no matter the cost. They all showed up that day. My aunt in pearls and a black blazer like she was attending a gala. My brother in a carefully wrinkled suit that said, Apology Tour. Even Olivia wore flats, like she thought looking humble might sway a judge. But no one was fooled. Not anymore. Because today wasn't about pretending. Today was the hearing. And everything was going on the record. I took my seat at the front of the room beside Mr. Herrick. He gave me a quiet nod, slid a small remote into my palm, and whispered, When they try to lie, just press play. Let your grandfather do the talking. Behind us, the gallery was nearly full. Reporters, attorneys, a few former friends of the family who'd come to support them, and probably to watch a train wreck. The judge entered. The court rose. Then the questioning began. The defense started simple. Predictable. Helen claimed that Grandpa was ill. He wasn't himself in those final years, she said, dabbing at her eyes. He became paranoid. Secretive. Accusing us of things we never did. Noah jumped in next. He told me once that he regretted writing that new will. I didn't want to say anything, he was confused near the end. And Olivia? I loved Grandpa. I didn't always show it, but I would never hurt him. I watched them perform. Rehearsed lines. Crocodile tears. And when they finished, the judge turned to me. Mr. Wells. Your response. I stood, cleared my throat, and pressed play. The courtroom fell silent as Grandpa's voice filled the speakers. She said I was paranoid. That I forgot things. But I remember everything, especially the day I caught her calling the bank to try and change my trust beneficiaries without my knowledge. A murmur rippled through the room. Next clip, Noah's voice, from one of Grandpa's hidden recorders. If we push him a little harder, he might sign it. He's tired. Doesn't even ask questions anymore. The judge raised an eyebrow. Another click. Olivia's laugh from the home camera footage. Honestly, if I have to babysit him one more Sunday just for that house, I'll scream. No one made a sound after that. Then I spoke. They called me irresponsible. Said I didn't deserve this house. This legacy. But I didn't earn it with grades or investments. I earned it by showing up. When they forgot his birthday, I remembered. When they fought over his land, I walked him through the garden. When they left, I stayed. I paused and looked each of them in the eye. He saw you. All of you. And in the end, he chose to speak for himself. I'm just pressing play. By the time I sat down, no one was whispering. Even the reporters looked stunned. The judge called a recess before issuing a ruling. But I didn't need to hear it to know the outcome. They had already lost. Not just the case, but the last ounce of illusion that had shielded them from the truth. That evening, as the verdict was made public, a final letter arrived. A physical one, stamped and handwritten. From Mr. Herrick. Inside was a small key and a short note. Ethan, Raymond instructed me to give you this only if you saw the fight through. The key belongs to the old safety deposit box at Wells National Bank. It contains the original trust deed for the Wells Foundation. It's yours now. Use it well. I went the next morning. Inside the deposit box, the original trust, naming me as sole director of the family's philanthropic fund. A signed photo of Grandpa and me, with the words scribbled on the back. Character is destiny. And beneath it all, one more USB. Just one file inside. A final message. Grandpa's voice, softer now. Older. Ethan, if you're watching this, it means you chose truth. I'm proud of you. Remember, this legacy isn't money. It's clarity. It's responsibility. Rebuild what they tried to rot. Help the ones they forgot. And most of all, never doubt that you were the right choice. Then the screen faded to black. I walked out of that bank with nothing in my hands and everything I needed. They fought to tear it down. But I stood in the fire and I didn't flinch. Because this was never about revenge. It was about giving his voice a second life. And now? Now it was time for mine. They left one by one. Helen tried to appeal the verdict. She lost. Noah faced a full investigation, and when the financial crimes became undeniable, even he stopped denying them. Olivia vanished from social media and quietly moved to another city, her legacy of fake charity work falling apart. The Wells name, once polished and untouchable, now trended for all the wrong reasons. But not because I destroyed it. Because I chose to rebuild it on truth. 1 month later, I stood before a crowded hall filled with press, local leaders, and the board of what used to be the Wells Family Foundation. Behind me was a new sign. The Wells Trust, reimagined for the forgotten. Grandpa's mission was always to help underfunded youth programs, education for low-income families, and mental health services. His children twisted that vision into PR-friendly donations that looked good on paper but did little in practice. Now we were starting again from zero if necessary. I adjusted the mic. Thank you all for being here. A year ago, I never thought I'd be standing here. In fact, if you'd asked me, I would have said I didn't deserve any of this. I failed school. I messed up more than I got right. But when everything fell apart, I was the one who stayed. I showed up not perfectly but honestly. I paused, scanning the room. People were listening. This legacy wasn't something I inherited. It was something I was trusted with. Not because I was the smartest or most successful, but because I cared when no one else did. After the ceremony, people approached me, not with praise, but with stories. A man who had once worked as Grandpa's gardener told me how he received a secret scholarship from him under a false foundation name because he didn't want the credit, just the outcome. A woman in tears said her son had almost been pulled from school until an anonymous donation from Grandpa paid the tuition. He'd been doing this for years, quietly, intentionally, without telling anyone. And now it was my turn. Not to live up to his name, but to honor his purpose. Back at the estate that night, I sat on the back porch under the stars. The telescope still stood in its spot. I looked up at the sky, like we used to do, and I whispered, "I hope you're proud. Because I finally see what you saw in me." A breeze rolled across the porch, gentle and warm. And I felt it, not just the wind, but the weight of what I carried. And strangely, for the first time, it didn't feel heavy. To whoever's listening, if you've ever been made to feel like you're not enough, if they told you you'd never matter unless you succeeded on their terms, if you were shut out, ignored, or mocked for being different, let this be your reminder: character isn't built by applause. It's built in quiet rooms, through hard choices, when no one's watching. You don't have to be perfect to deserve respect. You don't have to be loud to have power. You just have to be real. Because in the end, the most powerful legacy you can leave is one that tells the truth.